Hey everybody, it's Anna and welcome back to my BookTube channel. I'm actually sitting down to film things 2 days in a row, which is kind of unusual given the state of my channel recently. But I was recently tagged by Kathy to do the Overwhelmed book tag. It's a tag that she created and posted recently and then tagged me to do. So here I am. I will be linking her original video down below, as well as all of the tag questions. And yeah, it's the Overwhelmed book tag. So the first question is, are you feeling overwhelmed? And if so, why are you feeling overwhelmed? Short answer is yes. Long answer is really not for any reason to do with books. I think I'm just generally overwhelmed with the state of the world, as I think many of us are, and with, a lot of things that I have coming up this winter in terms of family, and also, frankly, as I've alluded to on this channel, without going into too much detail, just some really difficult times I've been going through with my mental health, with my physical health. It's just, I feel, I don't necessarily feel overwhelmed by any one thing, but rather by a constellation of things that has just been exacerbated by being in a lot of pain and fatigue thanks to some issues with my physical health. It feels like it just grinds me down and it makes everything that much more difficult. So yes, kind of, but not by books. Number 2 is tell us about the TBR that is lurking over your shoulder. It's actually right over there to my left. I had a moment earlier this fall where I was getting kind of overwhelmed by life stuff and decided to reorganize all of my bookshelves. So I got my TBR off of my shelves of things that I have read or things that I wanted to highlight, like my RPG shelf, and out onto 2 big stacks on the floor. It's lurking there. It's lurking a little bit less more than it usually would be, because I actually did go through and give myself permission to cull books that are on the TBR that I haven't read, that I don't have the same interest in, and that I'm not necessarily gonna be reading anytime soon. I'm trying to be better about giving myself permission to let go of books that are not as interesting to me anymore, or books that I maybe bought a few years back with the intention of reading them and my interests have just shifted and changed. So usually I either gift those to friends or pass on to family members, or I just sell them to half-price books. So it's lurking, but manageably so. The third question is, how is video making / bookternet posting shaping your reading experience? So Kathy put this as kind of a more general question so that it didn't matter which platforms you were using to post your bookish content. You could do it for Bookstagram, YouTube, whatever you want. And it's affecting it somewhat, but to a much lesser degree. This year, my health and other issues in my life have really forced me to take a step back from the level of participation that I had in BookTube previously. So whereas before I was making a lot of videos for readathon TBRs, say, and challenges and tags and trying to get a video out every week, that's just not really something that is sustainable for me anymore. And there came a point in, I think it was like late 2020. Yeah, it was, because it was when we had our last round of the disability readathon, where a bunch of readathons got announced for October, and I really just couldn't keep up with any of them. And at first I was feeling kind of sad and anxious about that, because my reading habits definitely did change thanks to BookTube, mostly through readathons and things like that. But it just wasn't something that I could keep up with. I felt like my brain was coming unraveled at the seams. I had no energy. I had very little ability to sit down and read a book or even listen to an audiobook or something like that. So I decided to give myself a break. And in that regard, I've been pretty intentional about only participating in super particular things for me. I feel like readathons were very fun for me for a while, and now they're just not, with some few exceptions. I think that, obviously disability readathon is still very important to me. I co-created it. Queer Lit Readathon always has been important to me. It's brought me so much joy, so many queer books, so many connections with other queer booktubers. And the last bit is Indigathon. I really enjoyed doing Indigathon every time I've done it. I didn't post an official TBR to do it this year, but I definitely will be participating. I just need to get a hold of some of the books that I'm wanting to read for that. So I think going forward, yes, YouTube is still going to influence some of the things that I read, but not as much as it used to. Okay, question 4. What do you think you can do differently so you aren't overwhelmed? Well, what a segue. So I've cut down on readathons that I'm doing. A lot of what I'm doing, since I am feeling overwhelmed by stuff in my personal life, is also stuff that I kind of keep in my personal life and don't talk about on BookTube, like going to therapy and the stuff that I deal with there, going to make sure that I'm managing my health as best I can with doctors. And yeah, that's not really what this channel is about, but I also don't mind saying that, like, that is a big part of management for me and trying to make myself as healthy and happy as I can be under the circumstances. What I'm doing to also make myself feel less overwhelmed, if you watched my last video about Goodreads challenges, is just not really focusing so much on achieving goals when it comes to reading, especially like numeric oriented goals. I think our brains like that because we like dopamine and serotonin and all those sorts of like nice happy brain chemicals. But yeah, I'm just not as interested in chasing those down anymore as I used to be. So there's that. Other things I'm doing to help myself feel less overwhelmed is honestly to just be engaging with BookTube a lot less. I have my very favorite channels that I still try to watch almost all of their videos, but for me, taking a step back from the online engagement and the pressure to be on book social media all the time has really done wonders for my enjoyment of reading, my enjoyment of BookTube, and just my own like mental health, peace of mind, all that good stuff. So, you know, like everything, it's a process and it takes time, but that's what I'm doing now. Do you have any projects you really want to do, but something is holding you back? Oh my goodness. So many of those. I have had book ideas. I have had book and podcast and TTRPG related cosplay ideas. What's really holding me back is this like energy management that I'm really having to get my head wrapped around, especially when it comes to prioritizing what I really want to do and then matching that up with what I'm actually able to get through. Something that also has like, I guess, caused stress and stuff for me when it comes to posting new videos is just that, you know, we talk about captions on BookTube being super important, and they are. I have just gotten to a point in time where my physical health is at the point where it's hard for me to caption my own videos. Sitting for a long period of time has gotten to the point where it's very painful. And I kind of have to ration out when I'm sitting at a desk so that I can actually get my job done, and that leaves not as much time for sitting at a desk to caption videos. And it's still important to me, but it's frustrating to me that something that is so important to me has become vastly slowed down and significantly more painful. It makes it difficult because YouTube constantly is saying we're not going to be supporting community captions. I would honestly love community captions if people wanted to help out, because that would just honestly make content creation more accessible for me. But I also recognize that I have just over 500 subscribers, and that is not a ton of people relative to the size of YouTube. So I appreciate each and every one of you that is here, of course. I just know that as far as community captions goes, it of course helps having a bigger audience in terms of subscribers and people to help out. That's the main thing, I think, that has been difficult for me, is just that it takes time to sit down and make a video, and by then I need to change physical positions, and sitting down to caption something it takes more time than I can comfortably sit at this point. Okay, what's the next question? Oh, is there a book or genre that brings you joy or takes you to a satisfying place? Yes. So I have read a couple books recently that I really liked. The new Becky Chambers book. What was it called? A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. I always love her books. It's been since 2019, late 2019, that we got a novella from her, and we got another one recently. I really enjoyed reading that. I also read a book recently called The Story of Silence, which is a sort of historical fiction adaptation of a French chivalric poem about a knight. They use the word non-binary in the byline, although of course we know that that wasn't a historically used word at that time, but it was by a trans author, and I thought that this adaptation and take on somebody who was, gender non-conforming for their time period, and frankly, might be considered trans or non-binary today, depending on, if we could ask them. And seeing that adapted by a trans author was really awesome. And I also just finished reading Being Seen by Elsa's Unison, and that is her memoir about being a deafblind woman and her experiences in life and fighting ableism. And I thoroughly enjoyed that book. I found it very moving. I found it very touching. A lot of what she said resonated with me, even though we don't have the same disabilities. Just some of the stuff that she writes about, I was like, yes, me too. So I've just been taking a lot of joy in reading my my very valued books very slowly. How much does FOMO play into feeling overwhelmed? It absolutely does, especially when I kind of quit readathons. It was hard seeing a lot of people posting about that, and especially, I think I've talked about this before, the pressure to constantly be making things and constantly be putting yourself out there, because if you aren't seen, if you aren't visible, if you aren't doing the social media hustle, then it's easy to feel like you don't exist on BookTube. It's easy to feel like you're just screaming into the void, and Kathy talked about this in her videos as well, with videos that she has enjoyed making, but that have not gotten as much engagement as the rest of things on her channel. And I find that really frustrating too. I feel like a lot of my sort of disengagement and absence from some of the more, I don't want to say competitive, but things that at least make me feel competitive with myself aspects of doing books on the internet has really helped with that FOMO. But yes, it definitely does contribute to that feeling of overwhelm. Is there anything you do specifically because of BookTube/bookternet that you'd likely drop without it? Again, readathons, posting, sharing my YouTube links and stuff like that I do. I don't know that there's a whole ton of things anymore that I still do that I would stop doing without BookTube, mostly because I've been pretty much off of posting any kind of regularity for about a year now. So it's a little bit difficult to say, because I've definitely gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm not holding myself to the same schedule that I used to, just because it's not physically feasible for me. It would not be a good idea for me to do such a thing. So I think the last year is pretty representative of if there would be anything that I would drop without BookTube, because you've seen me drop posting as many videos as I usually do. I didn't worry as much about posting my musical covers as I normally would have, because I'm a quote-unquote book channel. If you're here, I'm sure you're here because you're interested in hearing me talk about books, but books aren't the totality of who I am as a person, or my creative expressions, my interests, the things that I like to talk about. So, yeah, I feel like that expectation that we have to only be one thing online is definitely something that I wouldn't necessarily drop it without BookTube. I've just been made really aware of it and had to actively combat it and say, no, I'm still going to make what I want to make, regardless of where it seems like my channel fits in to the admittedly very small ecosystem that is BookTube. Tag at least 5 friends who could use some time to chill. Oh my goodness. Kathy tagged literally everybody that I was going to tag. So let me see what I want to add. I'll add to this. I will add Aaron the Geeky Gimp. If you're watching this, you're tagged, and Fariba the Francophile Reader, some fellow, BookTube and more friends. Oh, also Cece, Problems of a Book Nerd. If you are watching this, consider yourself tagged. And now, with all that being said, I am going to go get this video uploaded, take a rest up, and hopefully try and get those captions up in a more timely fashion if I am able to do so. So as always, thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.